All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to a long coming Essence Chat. We are back at it again. I know it's been a while since the last one, but sometimes you need to give things a little bit of time to stew up and to get the juicy topics. And we've got a lot of good topics here. And I've got some of my best friends on the interwebs to help us out here. A triple pack. This is the first time I think I've ever had an Essence Chat with two other guests. Usually it's just one other guest. And we have a first timer on the channel as well in terms of me talking to him on the channel. We've had Stealth before, but we also have Paul Gale, so it's going to be really cool. So I do want to do some just little mini introduction. We'll go with Stealth is here on the Essence Chat today. Stealth, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, this has definitely been a long time coming, and there's a lot of good juicy topics to dig into.
Absolutely. And like I alluded to earlier, we have a newcomer here on the channel as well. Also a friend of mine, a fellow karate buddy. My man,
Yep.
Mr. Paul Gale Network is here joining us for the first time ever on the channel.
Yeah, thank you, OJ, for having me. You know, when I found you a little over a year ago, it was definitely good following you, seeing your live streams, then joining the community. And I've got to say, you have a really tight cluster of friends and people that support you, and I appreciate that, and the accuracy that you bring to the video game side of things, the fellow kinesiology, the fellow anime friend.
Yes, sir.
I was like, you know what? From going into martial arts or video games and exercise and creating your own thing. So I applaud that. I respect that. It's been a good part. It's been fun being a part of your channel, the live streams, the good video game content, and you know, we like a lot of the same things, so looking forward to chatting with you and Stealth and having a good time.
Absolutely. Paul Gale's one of these guys, man. I've seen him. This guy's out here ripped. He's out here turning into Goku. And I was like, who's this guy? Then he started coming over to my streams, and then he started doing his own stuff too. I mean, I looked at his channel. You have like video game sales, you're looking at it, analytically on top of that, very good attitude. And like I said, anytime he comes to the stream, he's very nice to everybody. Even when people say stupid stuff to him on Twitter, Paul's always very nice to people. Hey, you're a better man than me. I can tell you that right now. But thank you so much for being here, Paul. I appreciate that. And of course, Stealth and also Paul Gale Networks, make sure you guys check out their channels. They all have channels and they have Twitter pages. They will be on the video. You can look right at the video. It's right there. Also, the links will be in the description. Make sure you follow them and subscribe to their channel. Well, wait, Stealth doesn't have YouTube. Stealth, you don't do YouTube. You just do Twitter, right?
I don't do YouTube. I'm just on Twitter.
Twitter, yeah. So make sure you follow Stealth on Twitter. He has a lot of Twitter followers, though. So make sure you follow him. And Paul Gale does sales data and news and stuff like that on his YouTube channel. You can follow him on Twitter as well. So make sure you follow these two outstanding gentlemen that are helping me out here on the channel today. But we have some big fish to fry today because we're talking about Sony potentially buying everybody in the world, Square Enix being one of those. We're also going to be discussing the Nintendo sales reports are coming up pretty soon here, so it's good that we have Paul Gale and Stealth here. I don't know two better people to actually have for that topic. And then we also have Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which I know me and Stealth, we're both big Xenoblade fans. I'm not sure, Paul, are you big on Xenoblade or not?
I like it quite a bit. I've only played each entry once, so my memory on all the characters' names is foggy, but I definitely enjoy the franchise. Looking forward to 3 quite a bit.
There's people who have played it multiple times and are still foggy on everything that happens. Xenoblade is a trip. It is really a trip. The funny thing is, which we'll talk about in a bit, but I've been watching the synopsis and like everything over and over again. I've been watching these videos because I'm preparing like a how to get ready for Xenoblade, and there's so many things that you miss. Like when you go, it's very easy to miss it, but when you put it all together, it's like an epiphany in your head, like mind blown how crazy Xenoblade's story is. It's to me right up there with so many other RPGs, but we'll talk about that in just a bit. Make sure you guys hit the like button and of course subscribe to my channel as well. It really helps us out, and of course drop a comment below. In terms of everything, I just want to make sure that I say that now so you guys don't forget. Some of you guys just leave without dropping a comment. Drop a comment below. And once again, follow all these lovely gentlemen here on the channel. So let's go ahead and let's start off with Sony buying Square Enix rumors. There has been perpetual rumors of Sony buying stuff because now this is the acquisition season. Microsoft started buying up everybody. Tencent has been buying up everybody. Embracer Group has been buying IPs left and right. So now everybody is in this frenzy of buying this and that. And I think think that has potentially caused more rumors, more, not true than true to be happening. But the most recent thing lately is the Sony's going to be buying Square Enix rumors, which Game Over Greggy, he has, Kind of Funny podcast. He talked about it on there. I think Jeff Grubb has maybe loosely mentioned it. But I did want to get to my panel here to talk about that. Stealth, I know this is something that might have caused you a little bit of a brain aneurysm before. So I definitely want to give you a first crack at this. What are your thoughts on these rumors of Sony buying Square Enix that have popped up recently?
Yeah, I mean, there always seem to be acquisition rumors these days. And the truth is, when we hear a rumor, usually it doesn't come true because of antitrust, laws and things. People have to keep that stuff that are involved. They have to keep it pretty tight, to the chest. So like nobody heard about like Embracer buying, all of Square Enix's Western studios ahead of time. That wasn't really a rumor. So listening to Greg Miller yesterday, even he wasn't sure if lines got crossed, and some of these rumors were about Sony maybe potentially trying to buy the Western studios. He said he heard the same rumors that, Jeff was hearing. And maybe that was the case too. So there's potential that a lot of this could just be one big, mix up, and, potentially Sony did look into it. But for me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I tweeted this yesterday, but already this year, Square Enix has 2 Switch exclusives. They have a third launching in July, and then they have a fourth, launching with Front Mission, with a studio that they also invested in with Nintendo. So it just doesn't seem like, at least to me, all of a sudden Square Japan wants to be, under the Sony umbrella. And, a lot of people have saying, oh, but maybe it'll be like Bungie and, they can do whatever they want. Again, Bungie doesn't make Nintendo games, and Sony has a weird thing with Nintendo. There's always rumors about exclusive deals that exclude Nintendo. Obviously, that's not corroborated or anything, but we hear about that stuff. So, the idea all of a sudden that Square Enix would go from, mostly being Switch exclusives, PlayStation exclusives, and multiplat to just being under Sony, it just doesn't sound realistic to me. But, anything could happen, in this crazy video game world.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely well spoken on that one. Paul, what is your take as someone who's been, in the industry covering it for a very long time? For those who don't know, Paul's been going to E3 for over a decade now? I mean, you've went to, how many E3s have you been to?
21.
21.
My first E3, I was supposed to go in 1999, and I would have only been 15 years old, but I was able to go, and just something happened on the other end that didn't work out. But my first E3 officially was 2000. I was still technically 16, but was allowed to go in, and I've been to every one since then. 2001, 2, 3, 4, all the way up until 19. And then, of course, 2020's got canceled. 2021 was online, and then this year's canceled. But yeah, I guess 20 or 21 E3s.
Yeah, so I mean, based off
been a while.
Based off of the, kind of like the residual stuff that you've heard and kind of behind the scenes things, what is your take on Sony or these rumors with, Sony buying Square Enix?
So on the likelihood of it happening, obviously there's a lot that goes into, as you've expressed on the channel before, for a Japanese company to be acquired from someone, not that easy. More likely to happen from a fellow Japanese company than, for instance, Microsoft trying to purchase Square Enix. So on the Sony side, that's at least more likely to happen. But there's still a lot that goes behind it, even allowing that type of big monopoly-like or monopoly-esque acquisition to happen in the country of Japan. But on the other side of things, for something of this magnitude to come out is huge, because both companies with stock trading and whatnot there's a lot that you cannot talk about, because if this is accurate and if it is known that it's happening soon, people could foreshadow, or people could, I should say, anticipate a stock change going up and down. So on the investor side of things, you have to be very careful with that. So on that end, I'm almost thinking someone's going to get in pretty big trouble if it is true, because this kind of thing shouldn't be leaked out ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Then again, words slip, friends are made in the industry, people talk, and then one time or another it trickles down and ends up happening. So if it is true, it's a giant leak that shouldn't have happened prematurely. And also, if it is true, this is something that's definitely going to be felt in the video game industry. Growing up playing Sega Genesis, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, etc., you felt that shift when Sony and Squaresoft at the time had that big partnership with Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9. You saw a difference in Nintendo's output on Nintendo 64, not having Squaresoft support, right? Square has only gotten bigger with Square Enix and Dragon Quest over the years, so I think you would feel quite a big shift in the video game industry from if Final Fantasy, if all of these future Octopath Travelers and Triangle Strategy games, and if they brought back other IP was only on PlayStation, that's kind of a power move, Capcom, Konami's IP, maybe not Konami as a developer anymore, Sega, Squaresoft, Square Enix, those are like the big developers that, are beloved by many fans for their, decades worth of games. So if it's true, it would be felt, is what I'm trying to say. Like there are a lot of Nintendo fans that they want that next experience. Microsoft fans, maybe they don't purchase Japanese RPGs as much.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
I don't want to ruffle any feathers.
I had people spending their whole life force tell me how much of a loser I am for me just suggesting that.
They sell, and that's the thing. Like, things could sell well, but things can sell better on something else, and that's factual. Does Mortal Kombat 11 sell poorly on Nintendo Switch? No, but did it sell better on Xbox One? Yeah, that's a fact. That's not a diss on the game for Nintendo. But anyways, going back to the Square thing, that would be pretty big. But kind of like you said, Stealth or OJ, maybe you both commented on it. Would it be a situation like Activision where, oh no, we still allow Call of Duty games in the future to be on PlayStation products and Nintendo machines potentially, because Sony, would they make more money holding on to Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and Octopath and Triangle themselves, or say, okay, we have 6-month exclusives on our consoles, and then we'll port it later on to other machines so that we have more sales, by being on more platforms, and kind of have both.
The issue,
kind of crazy.
The issue that I see here with this, before we kind of get we can play a hypothetical when it comes to the price of Square Enix. Here's the issue with Square Enix. Square Enix, their major franchises, now that they don't have Tomb Raider, now that they don't have Deus Ex, in terms of the Western side, Kingdom Hearts is not fully owned by them. So that would be a deal that they would have to broker, and Disney's not going to just be like, oh yeah, just take it. You know what I'm saying? It would be, they have to broker something. So they don't fully own Kingdom Hearts, which would be obviously a part of the value of Square Enix. And then Dragon Quest is very unique. A lot of people don't know this about Dragon Quest, but they don't fully own Dragon Quest. They own certain things, but the Yuji Horii family or whatever, they own part of that. So that would be another deal that they'd have to broker. So the value, that's two core values in terms of what you would get for Square Enix, is tied within franchises that they don't wholly own. So that's the biggest problem that they'd have to navigate. Now, I think Square Enix, or Sony more like it, I think Final Fantasy, that would be what they would want. That, I don't know if they care as much about Dragon Quest and as much about Kingdom Hearts, more so than they care about Final Fantasy. They've shown over and over again that they care about Final Fantasy the most. They will do things to make it exclusive. They will do things to say you can only buy it here first, or certain pre-order things. They will go out of their way to try to take Final Fantasy, in some way or another. They will, I don't even know how much they paid them for Final Fantasy 16, but I'm guessing it was a lot of money. I'm guessing it was the multiple tens of millions of dollars. It would have to be to get that type of game only to be released on PlayStation. I mean, because they can sell way more copies if it was on Xbox and on Nintendo or on whatever else, you know? So
it's not even on PC either, so.
it's on PC. It's coming to PC.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, it's coming. Final Fantasy 16 is coming to PC. But it's not on Xbox. You know, it's not on Xbox at all. And, you know, obviously it would sell multiple millions on Xbox. Final Fantasy can sell millions on the Xbox platform. So I think that's why, like, I think that they're really just kind of gunning for that. You know, they're kind of just gunning for Final Fantasy. So I don't know if Sony would want all of Square, like everything that entails Square Enix and all the legalities of that. I'm not sure. But let's get into the next part before we move into the Nintendo sales predictions. The cost. Now, Final Fantasy by itself, just that by itself is probably, I mean, if Tomb Raider is 300 million with Deus Ex and a bunch of dead IPs aren't worth anything. So really it was Tomb Raider. That was what was worth the 300 million. It was basically Tomb Raider. How much would Final Fantasy be worth? It would be triple, right? It would have to be triple or quadruple what Tomb Raider is, because as great as Tomb Raider is, Final Fantasy Online, and also with this, I mean, they've sold tens of millions of units in mainline Final Fantasy games, and the merch and the just everything that's associated with Final Fantasy is just, it dwarfs, it just dwarfs Tomb Raider. So what would be the cost? If, let's just say hypothetically, what would be what do you guys think the cost would be for Square Enix? I'm gonna go with Stealth. What do you think? What would be that cost to actually get them?
To actually get Square Enix, I mean, I feel like it would have to be at least $1 billion.
1 billion, that's it?
At least.
Oh, I think it would be a lot more. I mean, but that's, you know, what was it? Bethesda went for, what was it, 7?
I think so. But yeah, I mean, it would be at least that. I mean, there's really like, I don't even know how you would quantify that with the MMO being as popular as it is and making as much money as it is. Final Fantasy, 7 Part 2, Final Fantasy 16, and then you're buying all the Square Enix studios and all of their IP, not even including Kingdom Hearts and Dragon Quest, like Mana, Saga, all this other, and Team Asano, all this other stuff is going into it. It would be enormous. It would be enormous.
Yeah. What about you, Paul? What would be your estimation of, based off of other previous? They paid $3 billion for Bungie, so that's how much they paid for Bungie. How much would Final Fantasy be worth, and the rest?
Good question. I think I value Final Fantasy at like 1.2, 1.5 billion. That might sound like a lot, but if you're thinking in the long run with Final Fantasy 14, or if 17 becomes the next online one, how they went 11 was online, 14 online, maybe 17 would be. And long run, we're talking decades worth of Final Fantasy. So it's, the long win. And each new 7 remake, are they going to do an 8 remake? They have a long pool. Just Final Fantasy alone seems like it's worth a 1.5 billion type of deal. But they probably would be getting more than that. But like you said, would it be the Kingdom Hearts side of things, or in limited capacity? Would Disney say, okay, you could have that, but you have to make sure that Kingdom Hearts remains as multi-platform as possible? Are there other conversations like that would exist? Or Team Asano games? Okay, if you're going to do something that's an established franchise or has the potential of doing well on other systems, an Octopath, you have to make that on portable devices or mobile devices. Like, then you could say, well, what are you getting out of it? Does it become a 2 billion deal? Because like you said, Bethesda being worth quite a bit more, is it really 5 times more than Square Enix? That's 7 to 1.5. That seems like it would be worth too much more, Bethesda over Square. So maybe Square altogether is 2.5 billion. It's hard to say. What are you getting out of it? But for the majority part, I think that Final Fantasy occupies that, 1.5-ish perhaps.
Yeah, the Bethesda deal, I just looked it up right now, was 7.5 million for Bethesda. Bethesda has, obviously they have Doom, they have their own MMO, they have Fallouts, and they also have Elder Scrolls. So that right there is just massive. So I don't know if Square Enix can really compete. Like, I don't know if they'd be as valuable as those, because Skyrim, Fallout, Doom, that's a lot, you know, and they all have online too, right? They all have, you have the Fallout 76, which is worth whatever. You have the Elder Scrolls Online, which is actually very popular, right? If I'm not correct, that's popular. You know, so it's pretty big what they have there. So I don't know if they'd be worth that much, but ooh, you're right, Paul. I think I agree with you. Like, Final Fantasy by itself is definitely, the valuation of that franchise is definitely over $1 billion by itself.
So maybe that's why I said like 7.5 to 1.5 seems too big of a difference, but 7.5 to a 2.5 for all of Square Enix's, maybe that's still double. You know, you'd have to get into like 3.75 to be exactly doubles, and 2.5 is like a third. Is that a third accurate? Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, but
yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, it's
hard to gauge.
It is hard to gauge. I mean, I guess my final guess would be, I mean, it'd have to go for above Bungie. I would think that it'd have to go for above Bungie, considering everything that Square Enix has. So I would guess they would, I mean, it'd be 4 or 5 billion, somewhere in that range for them if they were. And that's just a ridiculous amount. I mean, that's a lot, but it would have to go for something high, like especially if somehow it includes Dragon Quest. And so, I mean, because Dragon Quest is huge. And if it includes Dragon Quest and it includes the rights to make Kingdom Hearts, then absolutely, we're talking 5 billion. Those franchises aren't quite as big as, you know, Fallout can be or what it's done in the past, but it's still, you know, those are still pretty big franchises, especially the merch. Like, a lot of people don't realize, like, how good merch and, like, clothing is. Like, especially in Japan, Dragon Quest merch just sells very good. It's a very similar thing, maybe not quite as popular, but almost up there. It's like Kirby. It's people talk about, oh, well, Kirby games don't sell this or that. It's like, well, no. Kirby merch, the franchise popularity, people just buy t-shirts and mugs and bean bags and all that type of stuff. So that can create value too, not just video game sales. And that's what Dragon Quest and Kingdom Hearts have. You know, there's like a whole freaking cafe, right, of Kingdom Hearts.
I think there's, I know there's a Kirby cafe.
Yeah, there's a Kirby. So like those, you don't create stuff like that unless there's outside value, outside of just the video game. Like you have to have merchandising, right, for that type of thing to be made. You know,
and I think Sony could benefit from that, because do you see a lot of people wear Last of Us shirts, Uncharted shirts? Do you see God of War sneaker deals with Nike like you do Nintendo with Vans and stuff like that? No. But if they did acquire Square Enix completely, Final Fantasy is marketable. People will wear Cloud Stripe shirts. People will wear Dragon Quest character, the hero shirts, and Slime. Slime is just a little plush, as a little character. So Sony doesn't necessarily have a ton of those. People used to think back in the day, like, oh, what about a Crash and Spyro? Well, not Sony owned. Yeah. Nowadays, I think God of War, Kratos, that's pretty marketable. Now that they got Insomniac Games officially, and they have that full, clear future of, okay, Ratchet and Clank titles. But even still, they're kind of, you know, they are smaller than Mario. You don't see Ratchet and Clank popping up everywhere at Yogurtland, and, you know.
They tried that Ratchet and Clank movie, and it just...
So that Square Enix would be a very big get. So it surprises me if it's true. And if it is true, on what level is it fully realized? Pretty big stuff out of it.
They're already being investigated. We'll end on this one. They're being investigated with the Bungie deal. So I mean, it's like, wait a minute, they're being investigated. I guess that's standard. Maybe it's somewhat standard procedure with these huge acquisitions. But all this studio makes is Destiny. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's all they make. I guess they have some new IPs they have a new IP that they're working on, but really they make online, you know, live service games. That's why they're so valuable. It's like, well, they can create a world and they can make money doing it that way, and people will buy their stuff, you know? So, all right, so that's that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next thing here. And that is Nintendo sales predictions. It should be coming up. Stealth, when is the numbers? I know we were talking about a little bit, but when is the numbers coming up? Pretty soon here, right? Like,
it's Tuesday. So the numbers come out on Tuesday.
The 10th or so?
Normally it's a 10th. And ET time, so like Eastern time, which is where I live. Normally the numbers come out about like 1 a.m. Like, they come out super early.
Okay.
So like 10:55 p.m. we're gonna get it in California. or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Me and Paul are in California, so yeah, we always get it like around 11 or so. And I'm like, and I hate those days because I have to stay up, and I don't feel like staying up. I want to watch anime lying down in bed. You know, I don't want to stay up and cover this. I don't want to stay up that late and make videos. But usually I'm just like, okay, here we go. I got to make these videos. But anyway, let's get into this because this is an interesting topic. There's quite a number of different things. So we're going to get the sales numbers of the Nintendo Switch. Right now, what we do know, there's unofficial, but, VG charts, which is not official, but they have the Switch passing up the PlayStation 4 in the US. We're going to get those official sales numbers. We're going to get sales numbers for all the games, I guess, in the quarter as well. So from January to the end of March. We should maybe get an update on Metroid Dread. So RGT's sweating in the balance stuff for those who know what that is. So we could get that. We already have some estimates. My man Pierre on Twitter. Make sure you guys go follow Pierre. He's from France. He does a lot of sales stuff on there. And he's estimating, based on his numbers, that Dread's right at 3 million. So, and Kirby also 3 million plus. So what are some of the highlights, or what are you anticipating for this report, Stealth?
So the big new game for this one is obviously Pokemon Legends Arceus. We haven't had global sales since Pokemon Company revealed what it was doing at launch. So we're gonna get that. We're obviously gonna get Kirby, which also came out before the end of the quarter. With the end of the quarter, we're gonna get updates on games that came out last quarter. So Metroid is a big one, and then like the historic titles. And a bunch of the historic titles are at like pretty impressive milestones. Like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is at 43 million. I think it's fair to say now with the DLC included, which the last number update didn't, it's gonna be past 45 million. Easy.
2 million in a quarter.
Yeah. Then there's Animal Crossing. Then we have Animal Crossing at 37 million, very close to 42. Will it pass it? It's going to be dicey for that one. Then there's Smash Brothers at 27 million. It's getting to 30, and 27 was before Sora came out.
Yeah.
So now this is the first time with like the final DLC and the game wrapped up. So those are like the big ones for me. But yeah, it's always fun to see like where the new software numbers land.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a prediction for the total console sales numbers?
Let me see. Where are we at now? I'm just looking that up.
I think it was like 103 million, if I'm not correct.
103.54.
Yeah, 103.5. The Switch, has had documented shortages everywhere, even though it's still performing at #1 levels, basically in every region. Will it hit 110? Will it sell, about 7 million? I'm not really sure. I think that's pretty high for the first quarter.
Yeah, that'd be high.
Maybe like 107, 108 million is reasonable. But again, like even though this quarter had Pokemon Legends Arceus, I think what's coming up might even be stronger for them with like Splatoon in Japan and some other stuff. So, I'll say 108 million.
Okay, nice. Paul, I know you're someone who's definitely well versed on the sales numbers. So what are your standouts, or what are your predictions for this upcoming Nintendo sales report for the last quarter?
That 103.54. If Nintendo had enough Nintendo Switch consoles to pump out, I think they could have hit, a higher amount than what they are going to do, because Arceus was a big jump, was a big, release, followed by Kirby at the tail end. But that 107.5, which would be just under 4 million for the quarter, because I think it was 103.54. So if it's 107.5, that puts it something at like a 2.92 million or a 3.92 million, which would be, quite strong. Legends Arceus did 6.5 million plus in its opening weekend. Oof. And within those first couple of weeks, it already hit 8. That was some inside number that I received. So I don't know what the full quarter is, but I'm looking at this top 10 chart and looking at Ring Fit Adventure at 13.53. I don't think that Arceus did more than 13.5 in its first quarter since it came out late January, but I wouldn't be surprised if, by June 30th, Arceus is replacing Ring Fit on this chart. But it'll be interesting to see where it ended up. Kirby on the other, also, Kirby did 2 million plus opening weekend. Now it had a few more days after that. Could it have reached 3 or hard to say? Now the game's been out for a month and a half plus after that original, cutoff of March 31st. So they're not going to say, hey, it's sold 5 million as of May 10th. So we're not going to get like that total amount, but probably close to 3 million plus or minus for that opening week. And that's still really impressive. I expect most of these bottom 10 titles, and that's the thing, we're not going to see necessarily updates on everything. Like if Metroid Dread sold 250,000 more, but it's not enough to report, it might not get the report. You know what I mean? Like
we need that report, Paul. We need that report.
Yeah. I mean, Nintendo usually has a chart with some of the older titles and how they did, but they cut it off after a certain amount of time. That's why we don't get Fire Emblem anymore or Xenoblade or any of that stuff. But I think Metroid would still, I think it would still be reported on.
Yeah, usually what they do is like they'll have like the top 10, and then they'll have like an 11 through whatever. Sometimes it varies how much they put on there. And then like Stell said, they just stop after like the next quarter or whatever. They just stop reporting on those games.
It's like a year.
I wish they updated those more often because it took a long time for me to build this chart together, and with others' help as well. But I have this top 384 separate 1 million selling plus Nintendo games that they've published of all time. 384 different games have sold 1 million or more. And I have the updated figures on when did they last provide information on. So you have titles like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles 1 that, past that 2.5 million, past that 1.5 million phase. But like the last update is, a year and a half ago. Yeah. We don't know. Are they selling, 10,000 every month? Because that's not a lot, but over a year and a half, that's 180,000 or something. That's a lot. That becomes quite a bit. But Metroid Dread is still pretty fresh that, it did that 2.74 million. And that's what, and you're going to have to talk with RGT about that bet. Because he was saying, well, hold on, whoa. 2.74 shipped. It only did 2.3 sold.
He was joking about that because we called him out on it. We called him out on it because we went back and saw the tape, and he said it doesn't matter. He said it can be shipped, it can be sold, it can be whatever. So he's stuck.
When my friend from a certain location told me 2.6 plus, that's what it did. And I reported, and I remember we had that conversation, and then Nintendo reported 2 months later, and they said it was 2.74, and that was exactly with that 2.6 plus without getting anybody, in trouble or anything.
But yeah, Paul did let me know about that, and and he was spot on at the time because it was before Nintendo reported their 2.7.
And those sales, when they come in, obviously they look at it as sales to retailers, in which whether they sell it or not to consumers, Nintendo made their money, and sales on eShop, which is obviously a live sale that Nintendo counts in. So that 2.74. So all I had to do was a measly 260,000 total to reach that 3. So I don't think that's far-fetched, Yeah. Right at about 3 is very likely. It also got that easy mode update. Whenever you have something like that drop on Twitter, easy mode, boss rush, that draws some new sales. Although, do you recall, was that easy mode update and the boss rush, was that in April?
One of them,
after that March 31st cutoff?
I think one of them, didn't the easy mode come first, or was it split? It was split into 2, because I think it was an April update for the boss rush stuff, so that wouldn't have accounted into potential more. But I thought the game, from what I saw, what I was tracking, the game was just steadily selling. Each month was steadily selling. So yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, maybe it's a 2.99 million type of situation where it's like right there. We know it's going to get there. We know it's going to be there, especially like with the push with the boss mode, because it did get an uptick in Twitch usage, people playing the game, speed running it, doing the boss rush mode. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. So we'll see what happens. Myself, I'm thinking I'm right with you guys when it comes to the sales numbers. 107 million. I'm giving them about maybe 3 million or so, roughly in that quarter, just because they can't make enough of them. I still haven't seen a Switch OLED in stores in a very long time. All I see, if I do see one, it's like it's like the turquoise Switch Lite. Like that's all I see. It's like the turquoise. I don't even see like the regular switches, like the regular new battery, the V2 switch. I don't even see those. All I see is sometimes like 1 or 2 turquoise Switch lights, not even the other colors. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see what the numbers will be.
Although I do agree with Paul, I do think that Ring Fit Adventures days in the top 10 are coming to an end. And quite frankly, it's impressive that it's even on the top 10, at all. I mean, between Arceus and Gen 9 Pokemon, I think its days are kind of numbered. Even Splatoon 3, I'm not even sure if Splatoon 3 is going to make it, because Splatoon 2 got bumped off at around 12 million. So like Splatoon 3 is a huge game, and that might not even make it. So like to get into the top 10, it's getting harder and harder, and basically you either have to be a Pokemon game or Zelda or Mario or something like that. Like it's very hard for something to just break in.
Yeah, Pokemon, or it has to encompass those characters like Smash Brothers. Like Smash has all of them. But yeah, it's like,
I mean, the 10 threshold now is it's going to be like 15 million pretty soon.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to be a big game to do that.
You're going to have Zelda next year. We'll do it.
Oh, that might be instant. Like that's going to be like first opening week. It's going to be like 15 million opening. It's going to be a crazy number opening week. Like I can see that doing 15, 16 million in the first 3 days or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Like as much as I love playing video games, I love the other side of seeing video games succeed as my favorite medium, as my favorite form of entertainment, aside from fighting and doing martial arts myself, video games is it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So seeing it succeed, like stats, they're meant to be broken, records are meant to be shattered eventually.
Yeah.
Remember, Breath of the Wild was outselling Nintendo Switch at launch?
Yeah,
remember?
Because of me.
There was 1,018,000 Breath of the Wild sold when there were 985,000 Nintendo Switches because people were buying 2 copies of Zelda. Some people couldn't find a Switch, so I'm still going to buy Zelda.
Yeah.
Never before did that happen.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
I bought the black box edition, which is worth a crazy amount of money right now. And I should have bought a couple of them, but I didn't really have much in my account at the time, so I wanted to buy 2, but I couldn't just because I didn't have any money. I just got laid off at my job. People were buying. I bought 2. I bought the the regular, and I think I even bought a digital version. So I bought a digital version. I bought a regular edition, and I also bought that black box edition. I know there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, I can't get a Switch like you said, Paul, but I'm still gonna buy the game. So I think Breath of the Wild 2 when that comes out, that's gonna do crazy records. Also, this summer is going to be very interesting because there are a number of big games, maybe not in the top 10, but are also going to be really good at help facilitating from like a Pokemon Legends to a Kirby to a Xenoblade. You need those filler games in between, to keep the momentum going. And I think that's what I like about the Switch. It fits a good spot because, some of the other systems, not to get too much into this because, no fanboy and stuff or anything like that. But like some of the other systems, it's like all about the big games, right? It's all about the next big God of War, the next big, the Elden Ring or the next big Horizon. But then sometimes there's like a lack of those, it's either indie or big, whereas like the Switch is kind of like you have like some of these games that are obviously not as big as the Mario and Zeldas, but you have a Kirby, you have a Xenoblade, you have a Triangle Strategy, you have these other games that are super high quality, that are really good gameplay wise. They're as good as anything, but just not quite there when it comes to like what people think AAA is. But they're so fun to play, in between the bigger releases. So I'm happy for that. I think Switch kind of carved out its area, and these sales, to kind of connect it to what we're talking about, these sales prove that, right? Like the fact that a Kirby can sell 3 million in the or 2 million in the opening week and something like that, which blows away Kirby Star Allies, by the way. Just completely blew that game to smithereens like in the first few days. So that's awesome, man. I love to see that. Like you said, seeing the game succeed. So we'll see what happens, guys. Those numbers are going up next week as of the time that we're recording this video. So we'll see exactly what happens. But now we are going to move on to the last topic here. And that is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So since the last time that me and Stealth have talked about this, obviously the debut trailer came out, right? And then we saw, September. Okay, so I'm just setting it up for the people that are watching. The debut trailer, September. We're like, what? September? No way. That's a quick turnaround for a game of that size. So cool. September. Then all of a sudden, Nintendo's like, well, maybe Splatoon's not ready or whatever the case is, and they put out a new trailer that says July, and I'm literally blown away. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm counting on my fingers when I'm counting because I couldn't believe it. July. That is nuts. And out of all the new age Xeno games, that's the earliest in the year that we've gotten it. I'm not counting Xenoblade, the original, because it took 2 years to even get that game from Japan, so we're not counting that. But you talk about Xeno X, that came out in April in Japan, came out in December here in the US, if I'm not back in 2015. Xenoblade 2 came out December in the US as well. I'm not counting Torna, or I'm not counting Definitive Edition. I'm not counting those DLCs or a re-release. But in terms of the main big new games, they're always later in the year. And this time we're getting it mid-year. So it was very exciting, and the game looks very good. It looks like Monolith Soft is definitely, definitely improved some things. But I wanted to get your first thoughts when you saw the release date and what you think about the game so far, Stealth, from what we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, going back to last year, we heard that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was basically done, and Nintendo could date it whenever they wanted. And so when it was announced for September, like, I still felt that, because it was like, wow, this is like, they announced it they announced the game in February, out in September, it's basically done.
Yeah.
So when they moved it up to July, I was like, maybe they can move it up to May if they wanted to.
Dude, that would have been so good.
But like, it didn't shock me because I already felt like the game was done.
Mm-hmm.
Like that game. The shock is how, like, they basically kept it, like, the whole development, like, kind of a surprise until, like, the very end.
Yeah.
And then we got some news out on it. But yeah, I mean, I'm super, super happy, like, with the, like, release date bump up. I got to get that collector's edition.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll do whatever I have to do to get it. I'm going to get it. But yeah, just super thrilled with that release date.
Absolutely. Mr. Paul Gale, what was your thoughts when you first saw that release date and when you saw the trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 3?
Okay, I wish that I didn't see the date before I saw the trailer, because I did a reaction video, and my reaction video was like, all right, so we found out some big news today.
Mm-hmm.
The game's coming out July 29th. Pretty cool. That's 2 days after my wedding anniversary, but I haven't seen the trailer. Let's go. I was blown away. Like, the game looks sophisticated. I like the past Xenoblade Chronicles games, but this one looks more grand in its storytelling from a theatrical standpoint, like the FMVs, if you will, the cinematic scenes, whether they're, real time or FMV. I believe they're real time, just, highlighted differently with the camera angles and whatnot. It looks more polished, like it looks bigger when these energy blasts are firing off. And in the latest trailer that we saw, like, it just hits harder. The new character models look great. And of course, I saw the release date. I had to rewind. I saw that the, special edition My Nintendo. I think that's a good thing too, because Nintendo will accurately see how many people are going to the page regularly, how many different IP addresses are hitting it, how many different Nintendo account users are going there now. They're getting a little bit of a sense of how much hype, how many product do we need to make available, instead of talking with all distributors, how many should we pump out? You don't want to overshoot it and make it, too many that they never get sold. You also don't want to have it too low and have it as a scalping issue. But I remember seeing some folks worried about, I'm not going to have, it's going to be a scalper's dream come true. Well, you probably could only get one per Nintendo account. And if you have a Nintendo account, I'm sure you're going to have, not to say an easy time, but a decent time if you're ready. But I think the game looks great. I watched your video next, OJ, and I was like, oh man, now that's the reaction that's the real reaction when it's hard, because with social media, you're getting Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook all at once. Like, you can't avoid everything. But like, if you could just wake up, hit play, and record.
That's what I did.
When you saw that July 29th, I was like, oh man, I knew you were going to love it. I was like, I hope you don't know it yet, because I knew it. It was still awesome for me, but that's a good feeling, because, Xenoblade has definitely grown, and, for only being 4 entries deep, if you count X, and if you don't count Torna and,
Future Connected.
Future Connected from the Definitive Edition. Yeah, which we have to talk about X, and maybe not. we don't know about that. It's a sensitive
we definitely need to have like a lore cast where we talk about what could happen. But that's like an hour or some type of podcast.
I think it looks good. One of the things. Well, I don't want to. I'll share that for later on. But yeah, the initial question, I think I answered. I'm
say it. Say what you were going to say.
Okay, I'll say this part. I mentioned this in one of your live streams. Like, I have no idea if this is going to be a thing or not, but Nintendo has had great success with little sibling second player mode, right? You give the second player Cappy in Super Mario Odyssey. You give the second player Luigi, who can't die, in Luigi's Mansion 3. You give the second player Bandana Waddle Dee, who could keep regenerating life. You give a second player the control of an NPC in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and you've just reached that much more user-based accessibility. I don't know if you remember that comment, but I mentioned that comment, like, you don't have to, but have a dummy mode, have a 2-player mode, and just a simple hand that thing over. Because, like, that's what I used to do with I used to have some friends that came over back in the day, or like my parents' friends' kids, and they were too young, and like they wanted to play Final Fantasy 6 on Super Nintendo or Mystic Quest. I'm like, man, I'm just like, here, you're that character. Now keep hitting. So that's what kind of spawned the idea. I'm like, in an RPG, you could kind of do it because it's kind of controlled, and they thought that they were playing with me. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, absolutely. But I'm going to dash those dreams right now, because on the Nintendo website they say they say single player. Yeah, it's single player. But I see what you're saying. I remember back in the day, Secret of Mana, I was blown away that somebody else could plug in a controller and literally control the other character, up to 3 players with Secret of Mana. That was nuts, because before then we had all we've seen is just RPGs or single player. Final Fantasy, Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest, whatever you wanted to call it, Phantasy Star. All the games that I had played were all just single player, or you rotate, right? You know, Mario and then Luigi, Mario Bros. Or Mario 3 or whatever. So yeah, that was insane. But yeah, more RPGs it would be nice if you could do that with Xenoblade. It'd be really cool to be able to just hand the controller to somebody else and they can play as well. So I wanted to go into the next aspect of this whole thing. So a lot of the discussion with Xenoblade has been the growth of Xenoblade. So the first game, obviously there's a lot of situations with that, because Nintendo of America didn't believe in it. Nintendo of Europe was like, we kind of do, we'll localize it. It got localized. Nintendo of America took a year after. So it launched in, for those who don't know, Xenoblade, the original on the Wii, launched in 2010 in Japan. It launched in 2011 in Europe, and then it launched in 2012 here in the US. And in the US, it was a GameStop exclusive. And GameStop did all sorts of shady stuff with that game, hiding copies of it, opening it up, gutting it, selling used. Like, they just did ridiculous stuff. So the sales tracking of this game, and remember, there's no digital back then, okay? With the original Wii version. Wii U, yes, there's a digital store, but the Wii, there was none. So the tracking for this game is all over the place, but generally it's accepted that it's around 1 million units or something like that, right? That it sold. But it was such a botched and weird launch for this game, tiered throughout 3 calendar years, right? So it's hard to kind of gauge. Now, next up was Xenoblade X. Xenoblade X, from what we know, did okay for the install base. It was for the install base, it took almost all generation to get the game, because the game was announced in 2013. kind of a panic mode announcement because of the Wii U sales, and then we didn't get it till 15, and then by 2016 the Wii U was already kind of on its way out. So that was a little, I mean, you only have 13, 14 million Wii U's out there, so it's tough to kind of gauge Xenoblade sales there, but it still did well enough to where they instantly started working on Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and that's where the series kind of broke through to the next tier to 2 million. So now that we have, that's at the beginning of the launch, right? That's in December of 2017, so still at the beginning, and over the course of multiple years now, it's over 2 million units. Now, Xenoblade 3 launches with 100 million unit install base and more clout and more people playing when it comes to the franchise than ever before. So where do you guys, I'm going to start with Stealth here, where do you guys see Xenoblade 3 doing in terms of the sales numbers? Maybe like you could get like a lifetime or in the first year. How do you feel this game's going to do?
Yeah, I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is probably around 2.5 million at this point. Like, we haven't gotten an update in a while.
Yeah.
We know that Xenoblade Definitive Edition passed 1 million units.
I think 1.5 for that game, around
yeah.
1.5 or so. Last that we heard about it.
Yeah, so, I mean, Xenoblade is, at minimum a million selling series now, which is great. I wasn't always sure that, during, like, the Xenosaga days on the PS2 that it would be. But I do think that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 can pass 3 million units.
That'd be
I think that's a good floor. Yeah, and I think that's a good floor for it. I think I tweeted you this, and the only concern I have is that, this is a big saga, and some people might be intimidated to jump into the third game, without playing the other two. So there is a little bit of a barrier of entry, with the series, but on the other hand, based on what I've seen on Twitter and videos, I think the visual style of this game has been immediately a lot more appealing to people than Xenoblade Chronicles 2. People joke that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was, quote unquote anime. And I didn't really have too much of a problem with how that game looked. But this game takes like the cell shading of 2 and kind of has, Xenoblade Chronicle 1 kind of characters, in my opinion. It's a little bit more grounded. And I think that people have been responding to that better. So, I think in that regard, people are more interested in it. But, I feel like, if Fire Emblem, a strategy RPG series, can finally break past that 3 million barrier, then, a huge RPG like Xenoblade can too.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely see some of the stuff that you're talking about before we swing over to Paul Gale with the characters. It's just interesting to me because, one, I've watched anime my whole life and all that, and that's like nothing to me, so it's not like a big deal. And then once you start playing the game, you literally don't notice it at all. Like, yeah, Pyra is running around, but it's just like, it becomes just part of it because she's not like a human, she's like well, I don't want to ruin it, I don't want to spoil it, but she's something that's completely different. Like when you start playing and you start seeing their character, I think that's when it just becomes like absolutely nothing at all. And I think a lot of people realize that at first, it looks that way, but it really ends up just being nothing at the end of the day, just because the characters are so well fleshed out. Pirate and Mythra are both very fleshed out, good characters in the game that are funny and that have their own personalities, and they're not just there for that, as eye candy or whatever the case is. So I think once you play, you realize that very, very quickly that they're not just bimbos or anything like that. They're very intelligent. And they have their own backstories, their pain, what they like, what they don't like, and you almost see them as normal, even though they're nowhere near normal. And once again, that'll be for the lore cast where we can talk about the spoilers and stuff like that. And I'll also have a video, guys, talking about getting ready for Xenoblade 3, what to do if you have time, if you don't have time, how to get ready for it, so we can help more people that maybe don't want to go through the games get into it. Because I've been researching lore videos, the best ones to watch. And you can get through all of them in about maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. So look out for that video, guys. But Mr. Paul Gale, what is as a sales guy yourself, what do you feel is the floor or the maximum for a lifetime to date for a Xenoblade 3, knowing what we know at this point?
Kind of like Stealth commented on, Fire Emblem 3 Houses setting the base as like, hey, if it could do 3, this could do 3. that's what was one of my metrics was going to be. Thanks to Fire Emblem and its success, thanks to the growth of Xenoblade overall, I don't think this game does, less than 3 million life to date, because graphics are the first thing that attract people, and instantly the graphics sell the game better on that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into the game, it's kind of like a relationship, you know what I mean? You look at someone who's visually attractive, and then you get to know that person's sound, their personality, the gameplay.
That's a good analogy.
Like, that's
a good analogy.
But if you have all of your senses and they're properly working, you're great. You're blessed with that. Whatever. Sight first, right? So Xenoblade Chronicles 3 just looks better, so that's going to attract more. Doesn't have that potential of, well, some people get intimidated by like, whoa, this thing looks cool, but 3, I haven't seen the other ones. Maybe I'm not going to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, possibly, but I think that they're going to sell it and market it as it's a completely different cast anyways, and it takes place 1,200 years afterwards anyways, and right? I don't think that's spoiler talk or anything, but so I don't think most people are going to be turned off by that. There's a small percentage that probably will, but the series is continuing to grow. It's also on a much bigger install base than before. Now, it's not necessarily going to grow appropriately where, the first one, or Xenoblade 2 did 2.5 million on a 20 million system, so this one's going to do 5 times that much, math equivalent, and end up doing 12.5. No, not to say that, but 3 at minimum. I think it's going to review well. We'll see how many outlets do it, but if you want to go by Metacritic as, a general thing, because that's kind of a popular thing to do, if this game is pushing like an 88, that's going to be a high score. It's going to be well liked.
Yeah.
And, it could very well be like a 4.5 million, 5 million seller. Like, I don't think it gets to 6. I would love it if it's like a 6-7 million.
I would explode. Man.
I'd be very happy. Because I think it's without having.
I think Xenoblade 2 had an 84 Metacritic, if I'm not mistaken.
83? Yeah, I'll look it up, and you guys just go ahead and you can finish your thought, and I'll look it up.
Without having played it, I'm just hyped enough based off of what I've seen and what I'm trying to think behind Nia and Mio, and could there be something here and there, and I'm kind of whispering, not that it's helping because people can still hear, but I don't want to go into spoiler talk of what I'm thinking, who characters might be, and could there be a relationship with different universe, different past, and I'm all speculating. So I'm just hyped, and I see the quality going up, and I see that the team has had more time. The higher Takahashi Team 1 team giving more time. And, in general, developers happen to give better product because they have better understanding of the hardware further into a generation, bigger budget. So I think it's just going to be an overall better product without having played it, of course, myself. So who am I to say right now? Yeah, 7 million would be great. It deserves it. How do I know?
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be good enough that 7 million people should play it.
Should. I don't know if they'll get there. That'd be tough.
But
yeah,
I would say 4.5 doesn't seem too unlikely if it reviews pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 as the base, but I'll go with 4.5. And I think that would give Nintendo some confidence. Like, hey, we're gonna put more money into this because our plan is it's working. Monolith stuff is working.
I do want to go over.
What do you think, Sil?
I do want to go real quick before we kind of shoot back over to Stealth and wrap this one up. The reviews for Xenoblade over the years. So 2012 Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii, 92 average. Very high, very high. I mean, very impressive. I think the tech for the Wii was not known for a game that could make open worlds like that or huge environments like that. So 92 for that game. If you go to the new Nintendo 3DS, it's the same game, but that has a 86. The Switch version Definitive Edition has like an 88. 88, 89, but 92 was the ceiling for the original. Now you move over to Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U in 2015, that has an 84. So quite a dip from that, and I'm guessing it's because of the narrative being essentially kind of chopped up. So the narrative not being where it's at there. The gameplay was obviously just as good, if not better, but the narrative, or maybe they didn't like the gimmick without having seen the future stuff. So there's that. Now, if you move over to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 In 2017, you have an 83, an 83 average. So right around, kind of in the, lower mid 80s as well. And something that kind of makes me say that, okay, it's hard for me to always trust reviews is like Torna has an 80, which is just absolutely ridiculous that Torna has an 80 score. It's easily one of the best DLCs out there, and they really improved the system and improved so many different things. So I don't understand how that has an 80. That's ridiculous. And that's 40 plus reviews and an 80. That's absolutely insane. That game is incredible. That might be my favorite plain Xenoblade game because they removed a lot of the annoyances with Xenoblade 2 and just kind of kept a lot of the meat, cut off the fat, and said, here you go on this nice 20-hour adventure, or up to 60 or more hours if you want to do everything in the game. The story's very well done. Gameplay's very well done. Very innovative what they've done within the system. But whatever, that's my rant for another day. But yeah, I have to agree with Paul. If this game gets in the upper 80s, which I think that it has a possibility, that's going to greatly help. I know people don't like to think about stuff like this, but yeah, having a 83 Metacritic compared to having an 86, 87, that's huge for a lot of people. That could be a determining factor. Like, whoa, wait a minute, 80, so high 80s, so I'm hoping this time around things can be a bit higher than what we've gotten the past 2 times with, or 3 times if you count Torna. So I'm hoping it can get back up to that. Xenoblade Definitive Edition, Xenoblade. I mean, you're giving the new Nintendo 3DS version. You're giving that an 86, and that version's interesting. It's still the same game, but it's a very interesting version of the game. I can say that. So I'm hoping that it can at least be above that, above an 86. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with it. So do you guys have any final thoughts? Or actually, I want to say real quick, sorry. With my sales predictions, I'm right there with you guys. With the base is like 3 million. I agree with you guys there. And the higher number would be like 4 million. So I'm hoping that if the reviews are up there, it can hit like 4 million or so. So we'll see.
Yeah, and what Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 didn't is it's launching before the holiday period. So it gets all of that, Black Friday potential goodness of people buying Switches and things. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out like mid-December. And it missed like the major holiday buying period. So hopefully that also gives it a boost.
Absolutely.
I will. You asked anything else?
Yeah.
I do think part of it's a little speculative, but I think Xenoblade Chronicles 3 being bumped up 2 months actually increases the chances of Bayonetta 3 coming out in October, in a way. Because if Xenoblade Chronicles to the masses, to the less known, is a sword game where you're hacking and slashing things, and a couple of weeks later, Bayonetta, a character hacking and slashing stuff and shooting stuff, they're very different games. One's a huge open world RPG, and one is more of a closer knit game. 2 more mature kind of titles, not a Mario, not a Splatoon, not an Animal Crossing, not a Kirby, coming out closer to one another, could ruin one of the sales. For as much as we know they're different, for the masses looking at it, not necessarily as easily detectable. You have people buying Xbox One for their grandkid, and I thought that was the Xbox Series. No, it's the Xbox One. I wanted the Series.
I see what you're saying. It
happens. Like my first job, I used to work at Electronics Boutique, which was EB Games, basically. So I saw that kind of stuff all the time. PlayStation 2 was coming out when I was working. That's how long ago. And people would buy the PlayStation 1 thinking, well, it's the same thing. No, let me tell you it's not. But anyways, so I think for what it's worth, this helps likelihood of Bayonetta 3 coming out in October. I always kind of thought maybe it would, because it's Halloween kind of game, like Luigi's Mansion 3 launched that year in October. But this kind of further adds fuel. Also, if August is empty, correct me if I'm not, or fix me if I'm mistaken. Is August empty? Because we
don't have anything. We don't have anything for August right now.
Mario Strikers in the summer. Final Fire Emblem 3 Hopes.
Yeah, it's empty.
Splatoon in September.
It's empty.
So August is empty. So I think this game coming out, boom, July, lets that sell all throughout August, maximize its sales. It'll be different enough than Splatoon in September. And then should it come out October, Bayonetta, okay, maybe you see a less. But then holidays, everything kind of picks up again. So kind of the trajectory I'm thinking.
I think it's interesting because Nintendo is packing June and July with multiple exclusives or first party games. Like July has 2. July has Live Alive, which Nintendo's working with Square Enix on that one, and it also has Xenoblade. And June has Mario Strikers and also Fire Emblem. So clearly they're trying to get stuff released. So we don't know what's coming that second half. Like we have, and I'm guessing E3 or their next direct, or there's no E3, but June or July, whenever they have their next direct, they'll detail some of those games that are coming out. So maybe something does fill out that, because otherwise I don't see why they're sitting there and launching 2 to 3 games in one. I mean, this summer is June and July is nuts. Yeah.
I mean, I could easily see like Mario plus Rabbids 2 getting announced the next direct for August.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're holding it. But, I do agree. And this is kind of off topic. It will be nice to see Platinum Games get a win this year. Hopefully have a game that sells really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they're stacking summer pretty heavily with titles. And like, last year during the E3 direct, they announced, I think, 2 October games, if I'm not mistaken. They announced Mario Party, and they announced Metroid.
Yeah.
So we don't know. I mean, we all assume that Pokemon is coming out like the week before Black Friday.
November.
That's kind of like the thing.
Yeah.
But we don't know what they're doing in October. We don't know like when Nintendo is going to like release Advance Wars, which is done. Are they going to put it this year somewhere? Maybe. So yeah, there's definitely a lot up in the air. But I do like Xenoblade out, before the craziness with Pokemon.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that anywhere near it. I also wouldn't want like Xenoblade even after Splatoon 3 in Japan.
Yeah.
It'll just die. So Xenoblade 3 before Nintendo's like biggest titles is a good thing.
Absolutely. Well, I think we definitely covered quite a bit of topics here. I mean, we could probably go for a lot longer. I mean, like I said, we have to record another one of these talking about some other things after we get some sales numbers and after some of these big games coming out. Mario Strikers just got a new trailer, so we're going to be talking about that soon in terms of Mario Strikers and what's going on there. But I want to say thank you so much to Stealth, to Mr. Paul, Gale Network. Thank you guys for joining me. Paul, I will start with you. Where can the good peeps that are watching, where can they find you at? And do you have anything coming up of interest?
Thank you. Paul Gale Network. That's what I'm at on YouTube, Twitter, etc. On the YouTube side of things, my page is kind of all over the place because I do martial arts tutorial. I give free karate, taekwondo, tai chi instruction videos on that end of the spectrum, and then I cover video game news and sales and break down, analyze stuff on that end. So people that come to the channel, they might be interested in one or the other. If it happens to be both games and martial arts, sweet. Thanks for joining me. Something coming up. You mentioned the Dragon Ball Z thing. 10 years ago, I did that Dragon Ball Z real-life Goku transforming into Super Saiyan video. And I plan on doing a part 2 this summer, which will be a decade later. So the sneak peek will be like, Goku enters the hyperbolic time chamber and comes out, and it'll be me 10 years later. But, what do I do?
That video is awesome, so make sure you guys go check out that video.
Some people cringe, and but you know what? Like, it was meant to be. If you put your mind to it, healthy exercise, healthy diet for 7 weeks. That was the before and after, by the way. What can you achieve, right? Like, anybody has the capability of advancing themselves in anything, learning a new foreign language, learning something good, like within a limited amount of time if you allow nothing else to distract you in life. So my focus was, what could I achieve physically in just 7 weeks? Nothing else but exercise and diet. And I was like, I'm not going to do a before and after picture. That's boring. I'm going to go, Goku Super Saiyan in the mountains and stuff like that. So Yeah, thanks. I'm
Nice.
glad you appreciate it as a kinesiologist and as a fit person yourself and exercise enthusiast.
I appreciate
Anime
it.
fan.
I appreciate it, and thanks for coming on. Also, my man
Thank you
Stealth.
for having me.
Oh, no problem, dude. No problem, Stealth. Where can the peeps find you at, and anything of note coming up that you want to let people know about?
They can find me on Twitter at Stealth40K. Keep it on in terms of tweeting about Nintendo news, JRPG news, anything that tickles my fancy, I guess. Nothing really of note that I'm working on.
All right, you're not working with Sony on the deal for Square Enix?
No, I would actively sabotage that if I could.
Stealth's like he like rigs the papers. They're like, oh, Sony only offered $1 million. What? Square Enix like, what? Only $1 million now? Nope, deal's off. Stealth out here rigging the books.
I thought I read some breaking news though that you dropped, OJ. Didn't Sony announce that they're buying Disney, Microsoft, Nintendo, Death Stranding 2, Death Stranding 3, Death Stranding 4?
Yes, they're buying all of that. They're buying all of that, and also Dora the Explorer as well. So look
Dora.
out. My sources are very accurate on that, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I did hear that Sony was going to buy the land on Nintendo's new headquarters, so technically Sony owns that Nintendo.
They own the R&D building now. They own the R&D building. All right, nice. The Vita 2 will be developed in that building. What's that? No, but you guys, of course, you can find me right here at my channel, PlayerEssence. Follow me at Twitter as well. Got some cool videos coming up on the channel, so make sure you guys stay locked in. Once again, all these guys, all of their social media and all that is in the description below, so make sure you guys give them a follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will see you guys for the next Essence Chat. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for my guests for having you guys on, and thank you so much. We'll see you guys for the next one. Bye, everybody.